In this alternative history, everything changes in the year 378. At Adrianople, Rome is not crushed, and the empire's military backbone remains intact. Without that great defeat, the borders do not plunge into panic. Rome sees the barbarian invasions not as a crisis, but as a manageable problem. The Goths are not declared enemies in their entirety. Some are taken into the Roman army as paid units, while others are settled in the provinces in a controlled manner. This time, palace intrigues do not collapse the army. Since experienced commanders are not purged, the defensive line in the west does not completely disintegrate. In 406, the Rhine border is not broken. The tribes crossing the river, instead of becoming marauding armies, are transformed into federations loyal to Rome. In 410, the city of Rome is not sacked. As the legend of the capital's inviolability continues, the empire's prestige does not collapse in the eyes of the people. This is why the chain leading to 476 in our history is broken. Western Rome does not fall. It shrinks, hardens, and re-centralizes itself. When a transformation occurs instead of a collapse, Europe does not split into feudal pieces. The feudal system remains weak, while the provincial system continues to live on. As the roads continue to be used, trade does not completely break off. The flow of grain, iron, olive oil, and taxes continues within the same network for centuries. The Mediterranean is no longer a border, but once again, the empire's internal sea. North Africa, Italy, Spain, and the Balkans revolve around the same center. The Dark Ages, we know, are lived much more weakly because of this. Urban life does not completely fade out, and the order of records is not interrupted. As libraries, archives, and law schools remain standing, knowledge is not just confined to monasteries. The state's memory is passed down from generation to generation. Latin does not become a dead language. As it continues to live as the language of administration, army, and law, Europe is driven toward a much more common culture. Today's French, Spanish, and Italian might still have formed, but they would all have united under a much closer, much more official Latin umbrella. The church would also have grown quite differently. Because the empire remained standing, religion could have turned into an extension of the state rather than an independent giant power. The great power struggles between the Pope and the kings would either never have happened or would have remained much more limited, because there would have been only one center. Rome's true power was not the army, but engineering. As aqueducts, roads, ports, and bridges were constantly developed, technical progress could have accelerated much earlier. The industrial logic could also have been born in a different place. Not in smoky island cities, but in planned Roman provinces, the first major production centers could have been established. Cities would have been more organized, stonier, and more central. Forums would not have disappeared. Perhaps modern stock exchanges and parliaments would have emerged from within them. Even Paris, Madrid, or Milan would have experienced their identities differently today. These would have been major provincial centers of the empire rather than national capitals. The idea of the nation-state would have been born very late. People would first be considered Romans, then citizens of the province they live in, rather than French, Spanish, or Italian. For this reason, today's map of Europe would also look very different. Instead of a small number of countries, we could have seen a giant empire belt consisting of powerful provinces. Even wars would have changed. Instead of the endless conflicts of small kingdoms, major throne crises, and giant provincial rebellions within Rome could have occurred. The Crusades would also have looked different, because the border between East and West might not have become as sharp and disconnected as we know it. If naval power were preserved, oceanic discoveries would also have started differently. The first great flag going to the New World might have been the Roman eagle, not the Spanish one. The first regular expeditions to reach the American continent could have been made not with private adventurers, but with imperial fleets moving according to state plans. In the modern age, a project like the European Union might never have been necessary, because common law, common currency, and common citizenship would have already been established long ago. Today, we might have been carrying imperial identities instead of passports. The Senate would still be functioning, and Rome might remain the political center of the world. But the price for this would have been heavy. A stronger state could have meant stricter taxes, harsher surveillance, and less local freedom. In other words, if Rome had never fallen, the world could have been more united, but at the same time, it would have been a more oppressive, more monotonous, and more centralized place.